fitness culture really goes hand in hand with diet culture. It's really this pervasive belief that it is better to be smaller and to be thinner, and your worth is in your diet and how you're managing your weight.
Stress is the inflammation that robs us of life, energy, and happiness. Our typical solutions for gut health and hormone balance have let a lot of us down. We're over-medicated and underserved. At The Less Stressed Life, we're a community of health-savvy women exploring solutions outside of our traditional Western medicine toolbox and training to raise the bar and change our stories. Each week, our hope is that you leave our sessions inspired to learn, grow, and share these stories to raise the bar in your life and home. Okay, if you have food sensitivities, then this message is for you. I actually polled people on Instagram last month, and almost 80% of the people that saw my story said that they felt like they had food sensitivities. So that's a problem, because once you dive into the intricacies of that, there is a lot of nuance. So to help with this and answer the question I get in many varieties each week, I am hosting a live training. That means we can get together in real time and talk, and I would love that. A live training and a Q&A session called What Should I Eat? Answering your questions about food reactions and inflammation. You can register for that at kristabigler.com/food reactions. That link will be in the show notes. And I'm covering how you know if you're sensitive to food and what else is happening that has to be resolved to overcome food sensitivities. You don't just need to bounce from diet to diet to diet at all whatsoever. And where you should start for different inflammatory symptoms like skin issues and autoimmunity and histamine issues and hormone issues and gut issues and fatigue and pain, and how to tell what you're sensitive to. Also, very importantly, I'm covering common mistakes that happen when you Google this topic, or just in general, things that happen to even providers in their recommendations around food sensitivities that are honestly making things worse. So, and of course, your questions answered by me. I love to talk to you guys. I love talking to people. It's my favorite thing ever. So register for that webinar, kristabigler.com/food reactions. It is live on January 25th, and there'll be a replay available for about a week after that. All right. See you there. Access to functional or specialized medicine testing and standard blood work is a big piece of personalizing care plans to help our clients succeed. But getting accounts with multiple labs and ordering and tracking results from many different web portals slows efficiency by bogging us down in admin work. This is why I'm completely obsessed with our podcast sponsor, Rupa Health. It's a single portal that allows you to order from over 20 specialty labs in one incredibly simple dashboard. I'm talking less than 30 seconds to set up your free account and about 30 seconds to order the labs you need. All the results are in one place, and I can securely send clients their results with the click of a button. A big advantage for our clients is that standard blood work can be ordered for almost 2/3 less than other direct-to-consumer lab sites. Rupa is a lab concierge, so they send the lab invoices on your behalf. If a client pays for their own labs, they help them get set up with a lab draw, navigate testing questions, and they provide the requisition forms. It's literally a dream. Go sign up for free to help streamline your practice and simplify ordering labs for your clients at rupahealth.com. That's RUPA health.com, and let them know I sent you when you sign up. You can also check out the show notes for this episode for a short video walkthrough of how I use Rupa Health in my own practice. Today on The Less Stressed Life, we have, I believe, return guest Noelle Tarr, who's a nutrition therapy practitioner and National Strength and Conditioning Associated personal trainer. She is the founder and writer behind Coconuts and Kettlebells.com, and she's the author of the best-selling cookbook, Coconuts and Kettlebells. She's also the host of the top-ranked women's health and fitness podcast, Well Fed Women, and the creator of an innovative personalized home workout program, Strong from Home. She's the mom of 2 kiddos and a Marine Corps wife, so she's lived all over and currently lives in Northern Virginia. Welcome back, Noelle. Did I say her name right at the beginning? Noelle? Hopefully I did. Feels like it
sounded good to me. I didn't hear anything wrong, so I think you did great.
That's my secret closet fear, is mispronouncing people's names or saying them wrong. I think it's funny. My last name, my whole life was mispronounced. And so I'm sure that's exactly where that comes from,
So your last name now was mispronounced?
No. And I actually don't care about my last name now in pronunciation, because I married this name, Bigler.
Yeah.
And people will say, is it Bigler or Bigler? I'm like, they don't seem to care.
So how could I care? I don't care. They don't care at all. My maiden name growing up was Eimers. It was Eimers, means bucket in German. And people always use the I as an L, Elmers. And I was, like as a child, and that's the name of the glue, it just must have been traumatizing for me.
So interesting. So
my first name was constantly mispronounced.
Really?
Yeah. Like my grandpa called me Christy every Christmas.
Oh, I can see that. So people would see it and then want to change it. We all have these things, don't we? So like people would call me Noelle for some reason, even though it was very not Noel, it was like LLE. And they would always, spell it Noel, which some people pronounce Noelle, but some people pronounce it Noel. And then my last name is a very German name. It's Flaus. I would always have to say it's FL and then house, but no H, like Flaus. But it was spelled Flauaus. So everybody would be like, Flauaus? Like it was also like,
I was like, two sets of AU.
Two sets of AU.
I feel like someone messed up the spelling on that.
It was.
Right?
And I think that's where a lot of these name changes come from. But when a lot of people, because, the United States is relatively new, so many people were immigrating here and like a lot of names got changed.
That's exactly what I was thinking. I was like, they accidentally added it. This morning I was checking an email and like, I have insane address validation issues. So for anyone listening, if you have this issue, the USPS has an address management services office. If you Google it, and I did not know, like this is a 10-year saga and it's becoming worse and worse. And so I can't open proper accounts and all kinds of things. And so this company's like, I need validation that this is your address. And they're like, and so my bank sends them a verification statement, like, this is my address 134. And they're like, this one doesn't say your address 135. And I was like, that's not my address.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so the point of this story is that they send me a picture of my husband's driver's license and he has the wrong address. Like he has a thank you for fueling this fire. I don't know how I got off on that tangent. Sorry about that. All right.
Life.
We'll get to this. So we're going to talk about things that maybe affect us and our metabolism and our physical health and our mental health. And sometimes we don't even realize that. And I think we both have our own stories around this. I'd actually, when you brought this up as a topic, I didn't even think I had a story around this. And then as I was writing the outline, I realized, I'm actually working on that right now because I realized that skipping breakfast was really not serving my thyroid and therefore my metabolism. And it was an accidental skip. It wasn't like an intentional, but it was like accidentally busy, which is, kind of like a common woman thing, right? Like busy, whatever. So why don't you open this up with telling us a little bit? We're going to talk about like, is diet the stressor? And when we say diet, I mean like, is what you consume part of the stressor in your life that's actually creating unintended consequences a little bit. So will you tell us your story a little bit and why you're passionate about this topic?
Yeah, I will keep it brief because now I'm 35 and I feel like every year the story changes. So I could go on forever. But I think initially I had a very similar experience like many women where when I was young and 16 or 17, my body started to change. I started to get normal curves and I saw that as a bad thing. Why? Because of diet culture, which we're going to get to in a second. I saw fitness magazines in grocery stores. The internet was starting to become a thing and you could quickly, commercials, movies everywhere. We see women as needing to be thin and gaining weight as a bad thing and fluctuations as a bad thing. And oh my gosh, when you get pregnant, you're going to get huge and that's horrible. And look at all these people who lose themselves after they get pregnant. Like it's a culture and it's constant and it exists everywhere. And it's women should be thin and you need to be thin to be attractive and worthy and happy and fulfilled. Like you need to be thin, of course. So, it was a normal thing for me to be 16 and doing diet shakes in my school lunch and bars, diet bars and stuff like that. And over time, I started it just to be healthy, right? To get healthy, which you get praised for that as you start to lose weight or whatever. You look so good. But my relationship with my body and with food deteriorated. And going into college, I started developing really a horrible relationship with food and my body. I hated my body. I hated the way it looked. And it didn't have anything to do with actually how I looked. I picked apart everything. And I kept looking to the next diet to fix me. I would try to diet and then I couldn't stay on that diet for so long. And then I would go, quote unquote, fall off the wagon only to kind of beat myself up and get in the shame cycle. And then I was like trying to work out a ton because I thought I needed to work off my food. It was exhausting. It was not enjoyable. I hated my life and like how I had to manage my life. And I wanted to get out of it. I just didn't know how. And so I had my aha moment, which is one day I sustained a horrible hip injury trying to run. I started doing long distance marathons and I did a half Ironman and really wasn't actually taking care of myself in that process. I was just running a ton and working out a ton and not resting because of what was driving me. It was shame. It was, I need to keep pursuing this. I need to push through the pain, all those things that, our Fitspo was what we call it. And I sustained a horrible hip injury that made me I couldn't like move or work out for 2 years. And I had to really ask myself, like, how did you get here? What are you doing this for? And whose voice is in your head telling you what to do? Because this isn't enjoyable. You don't want this. Like, why are you doing this? So that catapulted me into many years of, I think, just repairing my relationship with food, breaking down a lot of horrible lies and misunderstandings about food and my body and how it all works. And really, I had to rebuild a new narrative, what I consider now to be built on actual like truth. And that is, your worth is not in how much you work out or how many calories you eat or your ability to intermittent fast, for the set window that everybody says is the best. Like, and you don't have to eat perfectly and you don't have to work out every day. Like, you don't have to be in such tight control of everything. And in fact, that control, that hyper focus on food and movement and all the things, that's actually what's causing your body more stress and to be unhealthy. And so I started looking at health as mental, physical, emotional. It took many years for me to dig myself out of that hole. But as I went back to school, I became a nutritional therapy practitioner. I got a personal training certification. I really wanted to focus on how can I help women pursue health and be less stressed, but do it in a way that doesn't cause them more mental and emotional stress. Because 90%, I would say maybe even 99% of women stress themselves out in the pursuit of health. And so how can we really pursue health in a way that is right for you? So specific to you, customized to you. And it actually improves your mental and emotional health and your relationship with your body. And you get on your body's side as opposed to constantly fighting it. So that's kind of what started Coconuts and Kettlebells almost a decade ago. And ever since then, my story has continued to evolve as I've become a mom and all the things. But that's really, I think what started it all.
I was going to ask you if your food relationship, your story, I mean, of course it did make you want to go pursue nutrition and fitness. And I hear that I see that all the time as people learn about something, they want to learn more about it, or they want to kind of like be in the circle, or like they want to have something, they want to have a thing around that, right? Like they want to go to school for it completely, or whatever. It doesn't matter. There's a lot of options there. At what point did that decision come in the story? Were you already, because sometimes we make those decisions before we're in a healthy place with our body and relationship. And I have those people as clients often where they're going for something and it's like, well, they haven't, addressed their own stuff, which that's part of why they're working on it. So it's not a criticism whatsoever. It's just like an observation. And so I'm curious where that came in. What do you think was the motivation there?
So interesting you said that, because I kind of see that sometimes not as a red flag, but as a flag, when you have clients that are like, oh, I want to go to school for food and all that kind of stuff, because we find that when women are starving, specifically, they've been, dieting on yo-yo dieting, they become obsessed with food. And so a lot of women go into, the food, whatever nutritionist route, because they are so obsessed with food and trying to control their food. Mm-hmm. For me, it actually came after everything. And so alongside of my story, because, the fat-free movement and all that kind of stuff was telling us to not eat fat. And I was actually a vegetarian for a long time. And one of the stepping stones was I ended up stopping running and all that kind of stuff. And I started doing strength training and did some CrossFit stuff and started dabbling in paleo and gluten-free and all that kind of stuff. And I actually experienced a lot better health, finally eating nourishing meats and eating fat again. And that kind of like opened up my mind too. I've always had an interest in fitness. I love fitness. I still do to this day. Like workouts are enjoyable. And I had a disordered relationship with exercise, and that was a terrible thing. But now I do exercise in a different way. I do what's right for my body. I rest when I need to, and I don't hate it. Wow, surprise. So when I really started, that true love for nutrition and fitness started growing, and I started being able to do things in a way that worked for me, that's when I was like, I want to help people. I need a better understanding of physiology and anatomy. And so that's why I decided to go back to school, so that when I help people in this way, I can actually do so in a way that benefits their physiology and reduces cortisol and stress and all that kind of stuff, and supports proper hormone function, which, is a whole other topic. So, yeah.
For sure. This is where we differ, that you've always loved exercise. I had to find that. Otherwise, I was making some notes because you alluded to the comment of diet culture. And I think sometimes there's a lot of definitions here, but those don't always land. Orthorexia is obsession around food, and body dysmorphia is just kind of seeing the models in the magazine and then looking at your own body and being like, this is not how I look, and I want to change it to that. And that, fortunately, is a conversation that I think that we're having in schools, and I help with classes at my church for kids. And we are having these conversations now. And these are the hard things that these young girls open up about with us, which is really good, because you know what? I forgot that I had this question, but when you were quote unquote kind of spiraling down a path, which we didn't know at that time, I think we're slowly repairing the last decade or I'm sorry, not decade, but generation or two, because a lot of people have parents. I don't, but there's a generation kind of between me. I have older parents and a big family. So there's kind of I would say the years start to get really funny here, but somewhere between age 30 and 50 ish, maybe that 55 or so, that's a real body culture, bad relationship generation.
Absolutely.
So maybe your mother was actually part of that generation. I don't know. Do you remember her having any concern about stuff you were doing in high school or noticing? If you were packing shakes,
she was on a diet. Yeah, she was on a diet with me.
Okay. That's what I was wondering.
Right.
Yeah. So,
it's a culture that I think, our moms and, boomers, and they absolutely, a lot of them have food issues that I still get women who are like, I wish I had this knowledge when I was your age. I wish I had this understanding, because growing up, even when I was a teenager, I don't know about you, but growing up when I was a teenager, these discussions were not happening. Nobody was talking about loving your body and uniqueness and it's okay to not be a size 2. No, everybody was going for size 0, and people who had a size 0 gene were praised, and you didn't talk gaining weight was not a good thing. And I don't remember any of this discussion. And I can actually remember the very first article that I ever read that was what? We're talking about this now? And it really impacted me. And I must have been 23 or 24, which I'm 35 now. So, that was 12, 13, maybe 15 years ago, somebody was talking about it, but it just, the generation above us is definitely a dieting generation. My mom used to complain about little parts on her body. She was always on a diet. She was always trying to do things in the name of health and lose weight. So,
So I think the previous generation, this looked like complaining about parts of our body, and especially in front of other women for praise, fat-free, cholesterol-free. And you know what? Like you said, it's a culture, this isn't really, we're not pointing any blaming. It's just it kind of came from all directions. It was
absolutely,
eggs are bad, eggs are good, eggs are bad, eggs are good. I will say I was fortunate to not really have any of that in my family. My parents were just hanging clothes on the clothesline and gardening. And I thought was so uncool at the time. And I'm you guys were kind of trendy before you were trendy.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah, that's what everybody wants to do.
Yeah, right. Anyway, but now I want to talk about ways this presents now. You said something, I was vegetarian for a while, and that can be for a lot of reasons, but I will see it. I have seen it. I mean, there's an RD in our practice, and she would tell you everything is an experience, and we can test all kinds of things to see how it reacts to our body. It's a matter of, why am I doing this experiment? Right? Isn't that the differentiator, right? Why am I doing this experiment? So ways I see this presenting now, it comes off objectively and positively, but this is how it's presenting in our current time. Vegetarian or veganism, depending on the reason, or elimination diets, refusing to or being afraid to expand diet, intermittent fasting massively, right? Has health benefits, technically, accidentally gets misused all the time, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, those are just things I wrote down. But what are some other ways you are seeing this present now and in the past? I think sometimes the term diet culture doesn't land. So let's look at how this is affecting us. One more, because the result of that, well, actually, we'll get to that and when we talk about the actual results. But the result of this is your overall metabolism is now slowed down, by the way.
Yeah, totally.
Anyway. But is there anything else that you would add to this list that you're these are the things I see people doing for sure?
Yeah, I think, oh my gosh, so many ways. First of all, just to specifically define it, diet culture is really this pervasive belief that we have in our culture that, and it's most especially in the health and fitness industry, but you see it a lot in the fitness industry. Fitness culture really goes hand in hand with diet culture. It's really this pervasive belief that it is better to be smaller and to be thinner, and your worth is in your diet and how you're managing your weight. And it's the assumption really that your value and your worth is in your weight, and it's in your pant size, and it's in your shape. And you need to be actively, daily managing it, thinking about it. There are parts of your body that are a problem and you need to fix them. Cellulite is unsightly. Here's something to fix that. Your belly is a problem. Your postpartum belly is a problem. Here's how you can fix it. Here's a 30-day flat belly challenge. Here's a 2-week intermittent fasting cleanse thing, right? Cleanses that will help you lose 10 pounds in 6.5 days, whatever. It's this, idea that we see everywhere. And I think that it can come out in so many different ways. It can come out in even just our regular thoughts. How are we talking to ourselves? How are we talking about ourselves to other people, which is what you just brought up about women kind of complaining or putting themselves down in front of other people, not having grace with yourself. I still have a lot of conversations, even with close friends, and I hear them just put themselves down all the time. And I'm like, you have got to give yourself grace. You just had a baby. You do not need to be back into working out right at 6 weeks postpartum. You need a good year to recover. If you should just work on sleep, girl, so it's just this constant belief that we've got to get back to it, or we've got to get our body back. And if that is what is controlling your day and all your actions, you'll see it come out in how you're talking to yourself. You'll see it come out in what you're doing. Are you buying self-help books constantly to try to fix yourself, to find the next diet? Are you always oh, I wonder if keto will work? I wonder if is my intermittent fasting window not right? Is that the problem here? We harp on these tiny little things, being fearful of the holidays, feeling like you've got to either bring your own dessert or you can't stay long. You can't be around dessert. You remember that trend of pouring water on your food so that you don't eat it? All these little things of you can't be around food and be in control. So you've got to do all these hacks to try to make sure that you're not eating too much. All of that is diet culture, and it literally controls everything you do. If you are really deep in it and believing it and thinking, I've got to be thin, I've got to be controlling this, I've got to make sure I'm prioritizing my workouts, it bleeds into everything. So
let's talk about why this matters, because it's well, that sounds nice, Noelle, to give myself grace. But I also we have an episode called You Can Love Your Body and Still Want to Change It, which is a healthier approach to it. But so the challenge that you talk about and I talk about, for sure, we definitely come together on this, is that stress is unfortunately a huge cause of a lot of this, right? And so I want to talk about how we don't think we're stressed if we want to. I mean, I started rebranding this in some of my messaging, or nervous system imbalances. Sounds more interesting.
Yes.
Because I was dude, people are cool, moving on. They will not participate if they don't think it relates to them. And to be honest, even as a person talking about it for a long time, there was ways I did not recognize how things that I didn't know were stress that we're stressed. Example, running from appointment to appointment to appointment, getting excited and talking fast. My heart rate is beating faster. And all that means is that I'm dumping minerals. And so I have losses actually. And so what I care about is the physiological downturn of this. So let's talk about that a little bit because this is fluffy. And one thing before maybe we get to the physiology is like the challenge in being in this industry is that, is this really a nutrition issue or is this really not a nutrition issue? Right? If your thoughts are controlled about this topic that we happen to work on, you know, I know there's overlap there, but that's where it gets a little challenging. And even as a professional, it makes you ill-equipped. Like there's many times where I'm like, I am not equipped to help you navigate. There are people who are in the same profession that are equipped to help with food relationship issues, et cetera. And we can do a little bit, right? But to your point, a lot of people go into areas that they struggle with. And for a long time, I didn't even really participate in this conversation because I was like, doesn't affect me, which is not the way, we should handle things. But anyway, it's estimated that like 50% of people who are going into nutrition do have food relationship issues. So anyway, and that's our audience here. Anyway, but let's talk about physiologically what happens when we are, for lack of a better word here, obsessed, preoccupied, thinking about our weight and all of our things all day chronically. What actually happens in your body that is circumventing your actual goal?
You said nervous system stimulation, which got me so excited because you are the third person in literally the last 2 weeks who has talked about the nervous system actually being the cause, like overstimulation being the cause of chronic disease. So whether that is like chronic digestive dysfunction, like what's the root cause? Chronic nervous system stimulation. You know, that can be at the root of your gut issues. That can be at the root of your hormone imbalances, of fertility issues, of period issues, cycle problems, everything. And so I think I did this Instagram poll once and I said, is stress a mental or a physical issue? And like 80% of people clicked on mental. And it was a trick question. It was a trick question because you know, and everybody who listens to this podcast knows stress directly impacts you physically. It doesn't matter if that stress is coming from, oh, I've got to be like, I'm running right now. I'm running a marathon, which by the way is stress. Exercise is stress. Or I'm running from appointment to appointment. Like that's kind of like you're physically trying to handle a lot, right? Your mindset and what you are thinking about and how you are thinking about it can directly impact your physiology. Great example. If you are stressed around food, you're eating dinner, maybe you're eating out and you're a little bit, you're like, I don't know what's in this and I don't see a lot on the menu. And, you know, maybe there's a bread basket around and you're like, I shouldn't be eating that bread. Shoulds, right? I shouldn't be eating that bread. I don't want to eat it. And you're kind of stressed out. And maybe then you do finally eat a little piece of bread and then you feel really bad about it. All of that mental clutter in your head that you're giving, you know, you're allowing that real estate in your head is causing stress. And when we are super stressed around our food and we're kind of freaking out and we're not feeling comfortable and we're not allowing ourselves to rest and digest, we are inhibiting proper digestive functions. Our, you know, digestive enzymes aren't secreting properly. We're not properly digesting our food. So our food stress actually causes leaky gut, which can then lead to a whole other cascade of problems, right? And that's just one example. That is us feeling stressed around our food. I don't know about you, but like every client I ever had a problem, like because they were always stressed around food. And so then they would eat and then they'd get digestive issues or they'd get bloating. Bloating is such a popular symptom of people who really struggle with their relationship with food is bloating and all these digestive issues. And we know that the gut and our digestion are connected to so many other things. Not only that, but when you're super stressed out and like you said, you're not noticing it, we know that that can lead to what? A rise in cortisol. Chronic cortisol production can impact everything, including, you know, your thyroid. Like you said, you're dumping minerals. It can really impact. I've seen this really more hit women in their cycles and their hormones, because if you are super stressed and your body is having to use resources to support the stress response, and maybe you're really focused on trying to diet and not eat enough, like you're going to see major hormone imbalances, whether that's estrogen dominance or you're low progesterone that's connected to stress. And losing your period, hypothalamic amenorrhea. So what you're thinking and what's going on in your head directly impacts your physiology. When this clicked for me, my health completely changed. I did not see the state that I was living in until I was able to kind of step outside of it and say, oh my gosh, like I've been giving real estate to all of these thoughts in my head constantly, which is just putting me in a state of chronic stress. And that's going to lead to everything. It directly impacts my ability to sleep, for me in particular. It directly impacts my anxiety, and it directly impacts my chronic pain. So nervous system stimulation, I think, is just as equally as important as what kind of food are you putting in your body?
I want to talk about the overstimulation or chronic nervous system stimulation. But before I do, I want to just I'm going to reiterate a couple more things around that physiology, because I spend a lot of time thinking about this, way too much, just because of client stuff. And so what gets me as an Enneagram 3, I love results. My biggest fear in life is to not be valuable. And the only people who move more slowly getting results for themselves is those that have chronic stress. And the hardest part for me to see is those that don't recognize it as a problem or are pushing it under the rug. I call it bulldozing. I've been talking about it a lot. So this is really obnoxious. So as a psycho over here, I'm like, how can I help people circumvent this? So first, let's talk about more of those physiological effects. I'm just reiterating some things you've already said.
Yeah.
So when cortisol, which is our darling stress hormone that comes from the adrenals, is elevated, which happens, we should have that rise when we get out of bed because that's how we wake up. And then it should not be peaking in the afternoon, and it should not be peaking at night from that revenge bedtime. I finally got the term right? Where it's you've had so much all day, and then it's oh, you get the kids to bed, especially moms. And it's let me get something else done. So now I'm going to spike my cortisol, and it's not going to come down for 90 minutes. Well, for one, we're dumping tons of minerals, which affects hormones, digestion, et cetera. All those minerals are critical there. When cortisol is up, your thyroid, which is your master metabolic hormone, it controls your metabolism, your temperature, if you're cold, your hair loss, the appearance of your skin, all things that we care about as women typically, right?
Yeah. Right.
But when we have cortisol, instead of, T3 getting clocked in to go be the worker hormone, it heads out. It's autopilot on the wrong freeway goes down reverse T3. And it's oops, forgot to even check in there. My bad.
Yeah.
When we have high cortisol, it's not directly related with weight gain, but it's associated with increased appetite. And that can be associated with weight gain, maybe. And so another thing to note is low carb is a thing, which can be fine. I like to question, why do I feel good on low carb? That's all, just with objective curiosity. But carbs do buffer cortisol, right? So they help when your cortisol is high and you eat if I'm under stress, I'm going to make myself spaghetti that night, probably. Cause I'm going to feel so much better buffering that cortisol. Cortisol is a roadblock to estrogen getting out, which looks like period symptoms. Right. So it's I'm just hammering home a little bit. And like you said, with bloating, people have digestion and food relationship issues. It's a frustrating thing. It's is your bloating coming from stress because you can't rest and digest? And so you're not getting the nutrients. At the end of the day, I think a lot of diet culture has to do with less, less, less. And really what this has created is an under eating as normalcy. Yes, exercise. Right. And this is being perpetuated just in general. I don't know if we're making strides in this medically at all, but it's a 1,200 calorie diet fits no one with exercise, quite honestly. Yeah. So this is under eating. You talked about not digesting, getting nutrients 100%. And really what this boils down to is it's under eating, right? Because it's if I skipped breakfast, so intermittent fasting has to be done with such intentionality, not as an autopilot thing. And this is actually where my story, I was working for a program years ago that was kind of an intermittent fasting program. I would say I felt like that was the height of that time. And it created some bad habits, not relationship, but habits where I was oh, I'm busy and I just skipped breakfast. And so when you do that, I was oh, it's fast. So I was creating.
It's okay. I was fasting. Yeah.
Right. I was fasting. But what happens is people chronically do this without any intentionality, or they're not really nourishing hardcore. When someone says to me oh, I skipped this meal, I was fasting. I was no, you skipped a meal that time, right? You were not making up those nutrients, because most of us are actually underfed, which is kind of the whole point of your
undernourished.
We're undernourished, and that's been going on for a long time because of food quality anyway. But it's like less is not more in this case. More, it's like getting quality and nourishing properly is like hopefully what we're going to move toward.
Yes.
But anyway, I had to these were things I was writing down as you were talking. And I just wanted to send this home because it's like, we don't want to accept it. And so it's like, well, we gotta and this is the hard part. It's like, this is the part no one wants to work on, unfortunately. And we have to be able to recognize it. So chronic nervous system stimulation, you said I was the third person who brought it up. So how did it get talked about in other contexts?
Other podcast interviews. So I just did a amazing podcast interview about fertility. And she's an acupuncturist. So she really focuses on like the balance, the body's balance. And she was saying that a lot that, everybody's like, well, what's the problem? What's going on? And we were talking about endometriosis and a lot of these autoimmune conditions and how the root cause, like what she fixes at, like, I'm always like, get me I want the bottom thing. Like, what is the root of the root? What are you fixing? When somebody comes to you, what are you trying to change? Or what are you basically trying to fix? And it's being undernourished, but she was talking about nourishment in a lot of different areas. So undernourishment and then overstimulation to the nervous system. So once she's able to balance both of those things, the body can come back in balance. The immune system can come back into balance. It was just fascinating. And I can't remember the last one. It was like, I did a ton of interviews recently and I can't remember which exact one, but when she said it's the nervous system, I was like, oh, that is what it is. It's like an easy way to, and I was like, well, tell me what the nervous system is. Let's dive into it. And so when you really understand the nervous system and how it works, and this vagus nerve is connected from your brain into your gut, and you're really thinking then, your nervous system is what takes your brain and says like, okay, like lift up this dumbbell, like it's a part of us and nobody really is thinking about it.
Right. It's subconscious. It's meant to be.
I guess that's why it's so beautiful, right? But it's this overstimulation that is just crippling, I think, women in general. Well, and it's something nobody's thinking about. So, right. Or doesn't want to recognize.
It's easy to ignore when it's not exactly, when you work with skin issues, I always say like, I am frustrated by working with skin issues sometimes because it's analogous to weight. It's a vanity piece. And so we really behave a very similar way around it. It's like we could have a lot going on the inside, or we can have a lot of messaging going on inside of our body. But until that happens, I'm not an exception. Yeah. We're like, ooh, this is not okay. I guess that things are not okay here. Like something might not be in balance if I've got a giant rash all over my face. Like it's possible.
Right.
Anyway, but about nervous system, my point is like, it's so not tangible. And it's like, how do you talk about it? Because this is where it's like, it's all in your head. Well, it's not really all in your head. It kind of is, but not really, right? It's your nervous system. And so we're overstimulating the fight or flight side. And what happens when you don't stimulate or weight lift on the rest and digest side? So if you do not practice supporting the parasympathetic nervous system side, you atrophy. And then you're stuck in the fight or flight side. You don't have neuroplasticity. So you're like, I am stuck here and I am not and we lose neuroplasticity with age, but we can regain it if we practice a lot. So a lot like muscles, right? Like we do atrophy these with age. It's funny how similar these different systems are in our body, muscles and nervous system, pretty much the same thing. Let's make exercising the nervous system sexy again.
Sounds like a program name.
Oh gosh, I'm sure it would be such a hit. My kind of business manager last year, I was doing like an adrenal program, which is all about this. She's like, I think you're a little ahead of your time on this. I'm like, maybe not as hot as gut health yet. We'll stick with that. Yeah. Okay. I think we just covered emotional and mental. Well, we covered like physiologically what's going on in the emotional nervous system. Is there anything else we need to give lip service to around emotional, mental impacts of all of this stuff with the shame cycle, with diet culture, which includes everything we've talked about that we have not touched on yet?
Yeah, you said the shame cycle, and I will just touch on that a little bit more, which is diet culture. And just, I think we call it too wellness culture, which is sort of like, well, all of these things are good and you should really be doing it this way because this is good. There is no morality in food, and diet culture has really taught us that there are certain foods that are good or bad, and that we should really make sure that we're eating the good foods and stay away from the bad foods. That's not a real thing. Like there is, again, no morality in food, and you do not become a bad person when you eat quote unquote bad food. Food is neutral. Food is just there. And sure, there are foods that are more nourishing than others, and that's cool. And there are foods that are not so nourishing. And sometimes, like on Thanksgiving, you may eat a dessert, or you may eat 2 desserts, or you may overeat. That still does not make you a bad person. And that was really the thing that I think changed it for me, which is like, oh, wow, like I'm not a bad person if I eat bad food. And when I just let the food exist and say, Noelle, you can have as much of it as you want, like it's just in how you feel afterwards, the food stopped having power over me. And we talk about something in Coconuts and Kettlebells, my book, about the shame cycle, which you mentioned, which is you eat a food that essentially, like, let's just say ice cream, you've decided ice cream's bad, or something like, peanut butter or almond butter, something like that, which I see all the time. Nut butters are bad. And so you avoid, right? Some point you're going to eat the nut butters because all you do is think about it and think about how even if you don't like them, because you've decided they're bad, you want to eat it. Right now, it's like, because it's off limits, now you want it. And so eventually you are going to eat it, and you're probably going to eat like 18 tablespoons as opposed to maybe the one that you would have just eaten on a cracker if you just had like released or not had some of these hard, lines on it. And what do? You feel shame. You feel, oh, yes, I'm so bad. I ate the peanut butter and I ate too much. And oh my gosh. So then we have to fix it because we feel the shame. Then we have to fix it, right? And how do we fix it? We restrict further, or we overexercise until it happens again. Restriction. I can't eat that ever again. I fell off the wagon. I want to get back on the wagon. And then you eat it again. And it's a cycle that never stops. And most women are going through it all the time. And it is a constant nervous system stimulation. That's what the cycle is. It's stimulation and stress over and over and over again. And really being able to get yourself out of it is being able to see and understand these new foundational truths, which is food does not have morality, and your worth is not in your ability to restrict food or only eat good food or work out 5 times a week and make sure that you always do, even if you're tired, even if you didn't sleep, like get up and work out. And so I don't know if you want to maybe talk about other solutions. I do want to make sure that we, I want to give people
talk about.
Actual tips, because I always feel bad. I know you probably do too, when you talk so about things and then you're like, all right, go have fun, go figure it out. But yeah,
let's talk about what we can do.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think the number one thing, I'll try to keep this brief. The number one thing that I think most women are doing, that even subconsciously that a lot of we're doing and it's impacting us, yet we don't see it, is that we are allowing people who maybe are really deep into this wellness or fitness culture and in our lives to inspire us. And we see it as motivation and we think of it as inspiration, but it's really keeping us deep in the depths of feeling horrible about ourselves. So if somebody even has good intentions and you're scrolling on, do you feel like, assess, do you feel worse when you get off of Instagram, or do you feel better when you're on Pinterest? Like, do you feel worse about yourself in your life? Does it make you feel like, I need to go on a new diet, or I'm so mad at myself, I skipped that workout? Or are you like, cool, I'm so glad I'm taking care of my body today? And if it's the former, like, you need to start unfollowing influences that are giving you a negative feeling about your body. Those mirror selfies, those naked mirror selfies of somebody at the gym, like, oh, look at me, I did this workout. Here, you should buy my program. No, that's not helpful. That doesn't help you in any way. And just because somebody is thin doesn't mean that they're an authority on nutrition for you or like fitness for you. Like, I understand there are a lot of programs and there are a lot of nutrition programs out there, but just because somebody is thin and it works for them doesn't mean that they're an authority on your body and what works for you. So number one, remove all of those influences and really make sure that you are surrounding yourself with people and surrounding yourself, listening to podcasts that aren't driving home this idea that you need to be thin to be healthy. You do not. You can be healthy at a variety of weights. You can be healthy at a variety of shapes. You can be healthy at a variety of different seasons in your life. And if somebody's telling you you need to fight fluctuations, like, leave it, like tell it goodbye. That stuff's always going to exist. It's always going to be out there. And so I think as women who are trying to take care of ourselves and our bodies and recognizing like, wow, what works for me doesn't work for her. And that's cool. Like I need to take care of myself, not keep comparing myself to other people. I think it's really important that we grab hold of that and make sure that we're intentional about what we're letting in, because ain't nobody got time for that. You know, like we all need to make sure that we're really being careful about what is influencing us, because yeah, it's just I think it can change your day. And I know it's hard. And some people even have like really good intentions. Like I always get this question, well, like, but I really like her recipes, but then sometimes she makes me feel bad about myself. Like, no, it's okay. You have the freedom to unfollow. I think the second thing, I would start creating a new conversation around food and your relationship with food. So the things that we've been talking about here, like there is no morality in food. Yes, you can be healthy at a variety of weights. It's more healthy to take a rest day. Like all of those things, you got to put them on sticky notes, put them around, you know, your house, on your mirror or whatever, because that's the kind of stuff that you need to take on as like a new way of seeing food and your relationship with your body, because that's the kind of stuff, that's the groundwork. You know, when you start to see those other influences come in and maybe say, oh, you should lose weight, that will make you like more worthy or better. You're able to kind of come against that and say, no, that's not true. I know that's not true. Like my worth is not in my weight. And I think the third thing is you've got to figure out your own why, and you've got to figure out where your worth lies, you know? So for me, like my worth is in, well, Christ, obviously, for me in particular, maybe not obviously, but to my listeners, that would be obvious. And it's also in being like a mom and making sure that I'm there for my kids. It's also in like, how am I serving? How am I taking care of others? How am I like being the hands and feet to other people in my community? Like that's kind of the markers of success for me. And so I think when we can find those other whys and we can really say, like, what do I want to accomplish here on earth? Is it that I want to like be skinny? Like, is it that I want to be thin constantly? Because that's what diet culture says. And when you're able to like see outside of that and say, no, I don't want to waste any more time thinking that my worth is in this one little thing. It's in all these things. And this is my why. And this isn't why I'm doing what I'm doing. You'll be able to kind of step outside of that and again, see it for what it is. You're never going to get away from diet culture. It's always going to be there, but we're able to talk back to it. I know I do in my head, as weird as that sounds. I talk back to it. And when I see things, I can say, wow, I can see that. I can observe that now as diet culture, but I know what's true about myself and my health and my body. I know it's true about stress. I know it's true about how stress impacts me. And sure, I can lose weight. I know you probably could too. Like we could do things. We know what we could do to like lose the weight, right? Like lose 10 pounds. But I know for me personally, it would actually make me more stressed. It's going to cause me to sacrifice my health, my mental health. So I don't want that. And I think that that is true freedom when you're able to see outside of it and say, I could do that, but that's actually going to make me more stressed. That's going to cause me more health complications. And I don't want to do that. That's true, like freedom from the diet culture.
I will go through those three really quick. It is avoiding comparison culture and removing influences, surrounding yourself with what you want more so, like cultivating positivity. You know, if you jump on Facebook or Instagram or whatever and you're like, ugh, you know, then obviously create and like different things. So you can quickly change that. It's like changeable very quickly. Yes. Okay. So comparison culture, removing negative influences or things that don't make you feel good about yourself, creating that new conversation around food and reframing the conversation. I mean, this is working on the nervous system technically. So reframing the conversation is positive. The parasympathetic nervous system is stimulation. So it's really good for you to constantly stop and assess. And I think, if you're too busy, quote unquote, whatever, you know, whatever that toxic term is, if we can't take a moment to assess, you actually can't improve upon it. So if you don't assess, you can't move forward. So I just comment that because a lot of people are like, I'm fine. I'm like, have you assessed? Have you stopped and thought about it for a second? So new conversation, reframing the conversation, and then figuring out your why and your worth as number 3, which is like, if that is your, you know, someone said it is like, that's your North Star, which I'm like, what? Your North Star? And, you know, it makes sense. It's like, you know, good analogy. Right. Like you have to know what your North Star is that is guiding you, because if you're not reminded of that often, and if it's not like at the top, then you start to get disillusioned. And before you know it, you're pretty unhappy, to be honest.
Yeah.
Looking back at, so this is all like good solutions. What advice do you have for your early 20s self, that teenage self, which is, whatever, because, I don't know if she's still listening here, but like, what advice would you give to that younger self or to someone maybe that is identifying, yes, those last 3 solutions are appropriate advice, but like, what would you leave that person with?
I always kind of go back and I'm like, would I have changed things? I think there's a few things I would have changed. And one of them is like, happiness doesn't come from what your body is. It does not come from the shape it is. It does not come from the weight you are, because a lot of times we have this underlying belief that like, oh, I can finally be happy once I get to this weight or once I have this accomplishment. And that is a lie, because you can get there and you can accomplish whatever you want to accomplish. And if you will still be unhappy. If you're unhappy, you're still going to be unhappy. So I would tell her that happiness doesn't come from what your body is, and that is fleeting. And it really does come from what you are able to do and what your body does and the things you're able to experience. And you do not need perfection. You do not need to be like, think of all the people in your life who are important to you and who love you. Would they still love you if you started taking care of yourself better and started eating more and nourishing your body and maybe let go of these, hardcore ideas that you need to be working out every day and you need to constantly be trying to lose weight? Like, what if you never lost weight again? What if you gained the 5 pounds that your body probably needs, or 10 or 15, whatever it is? Would those people peace out on your life? And I think 99% of the time that answer is no. The question that I really had to ask myself, my 20-year-old self, was, who are you doing this for? And when I actually had a few people in mind that influenced me in a way when I was in high school. And I thought about those people and what they valued. And I thought, I don't really want to be friends with those people anyway. Why am I trying to work so hard to appease a group of people that I don't actually have anything in common with, nor do I align with their values and what they value in life? So yeah, I wish I could go back and just have like kind of known that stuff, but also allowed myself a little bit more freedom to like enjoy the time in college, as opposed to being like, I have to get up and run, which I think it's really important that we say it's not your fault. It's not your fault that you're here. You didn't like do this to yourself, but now that you have the freedom to like get out of it and see health from a different perspective. And it's life changing when you're able to kind of, get out of it and you can start living your life and enjoying your life in a new way.
Noelle, where can people find you online?
Coconutsandkettlebells.com is where everything is. And then my podcast is Well Fed Women.
All right. Wonderful.
My main things.
Thank you for coming on today.
Thanks.
Sharing and reviewing this podcast is the best way to help us succeed with our mission to help integrate the best of East and West and empower you to raise the bar on your health story. Just go to reviewthispodcast.com/less stressed life. That's reviewthispodcast.com/less stressed life. And you'll be taken directly to a page where you can insert your review and hit post.